Good evening, everybody. My name's 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for being here and coming and checking my channel out. I've been up here for a while now, but for whatever reason, my channel has gotten exposure and then it just kind of drops off. So hopefully you catch it in the algorithm or you see it around where people are talking about it or whatever. Hopefully they're talking in a good light. Anyways, those of you that continue to show up and watch my channel, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for stepping in there and listening to the cases that I present. That brings me to the case tonight out of Oklahoma. This case has been going around since Labor Day of last year, I believe. I haven't really done a lot of background research on it, but I want to start talking about it, and I decided to show a little bit of insight on it and to go over the autopsy report. So, um, let's go ahead and get on to that. We're going to listen to News Nation describe a little bit about the case, and then we'll go from there.
Question before, but here goes. Was Noah Presgrove murdered in Oklahoma, or did somebody kill him accidentally and run away? Or was it an accident, period? Random, tragic, nobody's fault. It pains me to say it, but even 8 months later, it depends on who you talk to. Noah, as you will probably know, is this 19-year-old high school grad whose battered body turned up on the side of a highway Labor Day morning last year, naked, except for his shoes, one of which was not his. From the outset, the police called it suspicious, which wasn't much of a stretch, but then they went radio silent. The family never even got a proper death certificate. But 2 days ago, bombshell. Noah's brother told us exclusively the police said to the family they were looking at several people as possible suspects in Noah's death. Implication, foul play. That same day, News Nation paid a visit to the Oklahoma City Medical Examiner's office, asking why, after all this time, why they had failed to produce an autopsy report. And then voila, there's Alex Capriello. Just yesterday, they produced an autopsy report listing Noah's cause of death as multiple blunt force injuries, perhaps from, are you ready? Unknown vehicle. Implication, pedestrian accident. But then under manner of death, which is accident, homicide, suicide, natural, the ME marked unknown. So we ran all of that by Joseph Scott Morgan, who's our go-to certified death investigator and forensic analyst. And he pointed out something really interesting. The assessment of the body was not done at the scene, and that the autopsy was done more than 24 hours after Noah was found, which is far from ideal.
Okay, so this 19-year-old was found on the side of the road, naked, had mismatched shoes on. There were, and he was found with blunt force trauma. And what we've known when we investigate cases and we hear about them, you have to listen to what's stated rather than what you believe. Because anybody can tell you anything. You know, they can tell you on the mainstream media anything. They can tell you about, you know, he was found with Easter eggs next to him in a basket. I mean, it could be anything. So you have to be very careful on what you believe. I would suspect that if he was found on a road and he was naked and he was found with mismatched shoes on, what would that implicate? I mean, what's he doing in the middle of the road with no clothes on? And that kind of brings me to another case that I tried to stream, but for whatever reason, I was having multiple issues getting it to catch. There was a case here in Texas um, where an individual took a wrong turn. His car was found in a ditch. They found his fish in a cup of water, and they found his clothing on the side of the road, but they never found him. And I don't know what that what that says when people like strip themselves of clothing like that. But it's interesting to say the least. What were people doing out there? Were they overheating? Is that what they took their clothes off? Were they taking, the GHB will make you overheat. And there's some other drugs that if you take will make you overheat. Ecstasy X will make you MDMA, it'll make you overheat. Um so was he taking these types of drugs or was he just out there with a female? Somebody caught him, beat him up, took took off. What happened? So let's listen to some more of this. And you're right, Rondi. Not only does she talk like that, but a lot of creators talk like that too. They talk as if they know the factual, like they were almost standing. They talk like they're standing right next to the crime scene, and they got information that the rest of the world doesn't.
And now today comes a written statement from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. And again, bombshell. They're investigating Noah's death along with the OSBI, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, and pay close attention to the operative line in the new statement. It reads, and I quote, currently the OHP is not investigating Presgrove's death as a murder, end quote. Which could be in line with the autopsy report. What about the family's report that police were looking at possible suspects? Do the police believe that Noah was a victim of homicide, death at the hands of another, but that it wasn't on purpose? And if so, they may want to have another chat with the ME. Or are the two investigating agencies not on the same page? Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased.
Okay, so she said the police was not investigating it as a murder. So what did they go to investigate it as? I mean, if it wasn't a murder, what are they investigating it as? And that's what I'm about to go over the autopsy with you. That way we can talk about that. And kind of like the other day when we talked about the case where the individual was suspected of suicide and it painted more like murder. Um, so it wasn't murder. It wasn't a homicide. I just don't know what to believe anymore. It's almost hard to um to comment on these things because of how inconsistent they seem, um how confusing. And do they confuse the public on purpose? Do they throw confusing information out there so people won't, so they can spend all their time speculating and letting them do their job? Do you think that's what it is? Because I don't see any other way than that. I don't understand why it would be something else other than that. Because otherwise, there's no reason for the police to be giving out suspicious information like that. I mean, she said they went cold, and then there might have been a person of interest, but then there was nothing. Okay, so this individual's name is Noah Alexander Nichols, age 19, date of birth 5/14/2004, white race, male. The individual who found this or investigated Trooper Zach Wright, Oklahoma Highway Patrol Troop G. 9/4/2023, time 7:31. So he gives the location, the city, the county, the date, and then he says pedestrian, type of vehicle unknown. So he was walking down this road. So the description of the body, um, the arms and the legs and the complete body were obviously damaged. The color was pink, purple. Posterior means outside. External observation. The individual had a beard stubble. His eye color were brown. Hair color brown. Mustache stubble. Body length, he was 73 inches, 175 pounds. Decedent, who was found on the side of a highway on September 4th, 2023, died of multiple blunt force injuries. So, if he died of multiple blunt force injuries, what do you believe that would be? If you're found on the side of the road and you have blunt force injuries and you're naked and you only have a pair of mismatched shoes on, what could this be? Tell me. Tell me in the chat. If you're watching this, blunt force trauma is anything from being hit with a baseball bat, you could be beaten up with fist, you could be slammed down to the ground. Any of that causes blunt force trauma, meaning that it's something that shakes you up and gives you damage from the exterior to the interior. And it causes a bunch of shock to go through your body. So it eventually kills you. So multiple blunt force injuries. There was unknown. There was an autopsy done. This is who did it. Leonardo Requero, medical examiner. And he signed off right there. So here is the report of the autopsy. Once again, he was 19, white male. And here are the blunt force trauma injuries. I'm going to read them to you. Could he have been tossed out of a car and left on the road? Hey, very good point. Very good point. Who could have done this, though? Head and neck. Abraded avulsion laceration on the left top of the head, which would be right here. Subjacent abrasions on the lateral left elbow, corner of the left eye, and left cheek. Front of the left ear with associated lacerations, and left side of the neck. So everything was on this side, okay? So if we're going with Rondi's theory there, that would make a lot of sense that if the driver was punching him or even pushing on him or anything like that, the left side would be affected. Abrasions on the right top of the head behind the right ear and the subjacent posterior to the right neck. So he had it on both sides. The abrasions on the right back of the head beyond the right ear and adjacent posterior to the right neck, broken upper and lower teeth with abrasions on the midline mucosa of the upper lip and the indentation on the midline mucosa of the lower lip. So his face was pretty beat up. And was that caused by him falling, or was that caused by somebody beating him up or hurting him? We really don't know. Exactly. We have to find out the last place he was seen and with who he was seen with. So, subcutaneous scalp and subgaleal hemorrhages on the parietal, occipital, bilateral, temporal, and left frontal regions of the head. Left temporal muscles, laceration, and hemorrhage. Once again, it's right here. Fractions of the left parietal, temporal, and frontal lobes. This is the frontal lobe. Basal skull fracture, splitting the middle base of the skull into, which would be right down the middle. So it split his skull, extending to the left temporal and sphenoid bones and around the occipital bone. So it would have been, it split, and then there's a suture right here, which would be the occipital area. Um, Additional separate fractures of the occipital bone extending into the edges of the foramen magnum. Subdural hemorrhage of approximately 20 millimeters. So a hemorrhage is basically the bleeding under the skin. Bilateral hemorrhage, swelling of the brain with lacerations of the interior surface of the left temporal lobe, brain stem, and its adjacent cerebral vessels, and left cerebellum. So that would be down here. So most of it was on the left side. So what was going on this left side? Was he getting kicked? Was he getting punched? Were they hitting him with anything? And I was watching a case not long ago, and they were talking about brass knuckles. Brass knuckles give you blunt force trauma, quick. This says cause of death, multiple blunt force injuries. It was on I was watching Annie Elise on, she was reporting on this 16-year-old boy that was jumped at a Halloween party, and this group had brass knuckles and they were kicking him, and he had a bunch of head trauma, and he died the next day because he went into cardiac arrest. Um, the torso, the broad abrasions on the upper back containing black material, so that would mean that the road probably abrasions showing combined linear and varicose pinpoint to round irregular individual patterns involving left upper back, shoulder, posterior left arm, and left side of the torso. So here we go again. As far as the body's concerned, we're talking about the left side. So the left side, the left part of the head, abrasions on the right buttock, abrasion with the pinpoint to round or irregular abrasions on the side of the left buttock. So he had abrasions on the left buttock as well. Laceration to the right and left lungs with contusions, left pulmonary vessels, left atrium of the heart, spleen, and proximal stomach. That means that there were lacerations, kind of like when somebody hit you with something really hard and they cut it, but they don't. Um, it's kind of like a laceration to your hand would be you cutting it and it starts to bleed, but it's not deep enough to really hurt anything underneath it, just bleeding. So, um, and then it tells you about this is the blood right here. Bilateral scapular fractures, posterior rib fractures. There was right ribs 1 through 5 and 8 ribs, left 2 to 5 ribs. Thoracic verbal fractures. Variable fractures, these were the back. T1, T2, T4 through T9, and T11. That's a lot of damage right there. Bilateral was left more than right. The extremities, abrasions on the right arm and forearm, left elbow, thigh, knees, lungs, and right foot, side of the right ankle, and side of the right hip. contusion on the back of the right heel, no evidence of fractures. Let me ask you a question here. You said he might have been thrown out of the car. What if he was chasing after the car and grabbed it and was pulled for a little while and then he let go and then all this happened? Maybe. I mean, I need to do a little more research as far as what was going on that road or what was going on that night because these are a lot of contusions, a lot of abrasions. It says in consideration of the circumstances surrounding the death, autopsy examination, and toxicology results, the death of Noah Alexander Nichols is due to multiple blunt force injuries. The decedent was found naked, only wearing a pair of shoes on the side of a highway on the morning of September 4th, 2023. There were no vehicle parts or debris observed on the scene. At this time, what transpired on how the body was found on the road having multiple blunt force injuries is unknown. Therefore, the manner of death is deemed undetermined. And let's read the circumstances of death. It looks like you're the only person in chat tonight, Rondi. I know where everybody else is. I peeped in some of the chats and I can tell you they're all listening to the Idaho 4 stuff. But it's cool. I'm glad you're here. The decedent was a 19-year-old male who was found on the southbound side of a highway by a passing truck driver on September 4th, 2023 at approximately 5:53 hours. He was naked and was only wearing unmatching shoes. There was a pair of shorts found several feet from the decedent and was reported to be his. Additionally, there were 3 pieces of a white metal chain, as well as a part of a tooth present several feet from the decedent. Also, there was a clump of hair found within one of the lanes of the highway several feet from the decedent. Additionally, a clump of hair was observed on the right buttock without blood or tissue. The paved highway consisted of 2 lanes with shoulders on both sides and a speed limit of 65 miles per hour. The highway was poorly lit at night. There was no vehicle parts or debris observed on the scene. Further investigation revealed that the decedent was at a house party and drinking on September 3rd, 2023. Then he rode an ATV Ranger vehicle with several men that had a rollover incident. The decedent was alive following the incident and returned to the party where he got into an argument with his girlfriend. The decedent left the house party and was not found until the morning of September 4th, 2023 on the side of the highway. So that's what happened. They pieced all that together. So he was drinking, went out on an ATV, came back after having an accident. So maybe some of that, the lacerations and everything else, was due to the ATV accident. The other stuff just happened to be what happened to him once he was found on the side of the road. So it said that they found a pair of shorts not far from his body that were his. Could he have been walking down that road and gotten hit by a car and landed where he did? I wish there was more people in chat. We could be really chatting this one up, but of course there's not. It says external examination. The body was received sealed with a number to give you the number, along with the Oklahoma Office and Chief Medical Examiner identification tag. The body was that of a normally developed and nourished Caucasian male, 19 years old. When they tell you all this stuff as they um, did the autopsy. It said the body was received wearing only an unmatched pair of shoes. The right shoe was a Hey Dude brand with a speed lacing shoelace containing minimal debris and grass inside. The left shoe was an Adidas brand with a regular tied shoelace containing more debris and grass inside. There was no observable damage to the shoes. Also received were three separate brown bags labeled as follows: the shorts containing a pair of white printed shorts without observable damage, white metal chain containing three pieces of white metal chains, and a tooth containing a broken half of a tooth consistent with a molar tooth. The scalp hair was brown, the eyes had white sclerae, pale conjunctive, and brown irides having 5 millimeter dilation of the right and left pupils, respectively. There was no evidence of hematoma, injuries, or lesions present. So the thorax was symmetrical. There was no evidence. There were no masses discernible in the neck and the larynx. The abdomen was flat. The external genitalia were those of a normal adult circumcised male. There was drying artifact of the scrotum. The back and extremities showed no significant deformities. There was a drawing in the black ink of a stick figure person on the side of the right thigh. There was a cluster of parallel linear scars on the posterior left arm and elbow. There were additional scars of different shapes of the rest of the extremities. There were scabs present on the right upper lip and palmar surfaces of the right thumb and index finger. There were healed abrasions on the right side of the nose, back, and the right hand, including the third through fifth knuckles, middle phalanges, and the index of the fifth finger. So these could have been the injuries from the ATV. There were healed abrasions on the lower back of the left hand, including the fifth knuckle, the medial heel on the left foot, left dorsal of the left foot. There was a round healing ulcer on the posterior right thigh. There was drying of palmar surfaces of the hand. There was skin slippage and bullae on the right upper back and left knee. There was a cluster of a tan horizontal linear interrupted abrasions on the left abdomen. So they did swabs. There was no evidence of any kind of treatment performed on him. No evidence of postmortem tissue donation. Multiple blunt force injuries. So it just goes into like very extensive detail on what they found. And what we notice is 4-inch by 2-inch, a brazen laceration having a fish-like appearance, having drying artifact of the left frontal partial scalp with the exposure of the bone. There are abrasions on the lateral left eyebrow, corner of the left eye, left cheek, front of the left ear with associated laceration to this area. There were abrasions on the right back of the head. So do you think that after he got into that argument with his girl, do you think that he could have been had an argument with somebody else? Yeah. These are a good question. Hello, Heather. So when it's talking about the fractures, right here. There were additional separate fractures of the occipital bone right here. The occipital bone, which is right here. There was a hemorrhage of approximately 20 millimeters of clotted blood in that area. The brain was swollen and lacerations of the inferior surface of the left temporal lobe. Brainstem involving the midbrain, pons, and medulla and its adjacent cerebral vessels and left cerebellum, which was all right here. There was fracture of the neck. So the neck had a fracture in it. These are some severe issues. I mean, okay, right here it says external examination of the back revealed broad abrasions of the upper back containing black material. There were abrasions showing combined linear and various sized pinpoints around the individual patterns involving the left upper back, shoulder, posterior left arm, and left side of the torso. There were abrasions on the right buttock. There were abrasions on the left buttock. So if there's abrasion, that's like a scratch, kind of like, let's say you fall down and you skin your knee. That's what they call the skin would be an abrasion, like what it leaves behind. The bruise, the cut, all that. So it also talks about the right and the left lung. There were lacerations of the left pulmonary vessels, the left atrium of the heart, the spleen, and the cardia of the stomach. So all that's on the left side. There was soft tissue on the left side. So what happened on that left side? Because it went from the left buttock all the way up the side, all the way up the head. So is that the side that he landed? But if he was shoved out of the car, if we're going with that theory, he would have had to been shoved out from the right side of the vehicle to be able to land on the left side. That only makes sense because if you shove somebody out, well, it could happen on both ways, I guess. If you shove somebody from the left side, depends on how they are outside the vehicle. Like, if you shove me out this way and I'm like this, and then I fall, that can make sense. That makes a lot more sense than what I just said, pushing you out from the right side. What do y'all think about that? I mean, if he was shoved out of a vehicle, that would make sense, but would that make more sense than him being hit by a vehicle? Him being hit by a car? I mean, because we don't know if he was walking or not, and what gave him the mismatched shoes? One was a Hey Dude pair of shoes, and the other was an Adidas sneaker. I would be looking for the other two pair of shoes. Who owned these shoes? Was anybody at the party missing a pair of shoes? Because it said that he got into an argument with his significant other. Hold on a second. I'm going to turn on the AC. Don't want to get banned from YouTube for not having any clothes. But yeah, I mean, if most of the left side was was the part that was affected. They also found part of his hair down on his back, a chipped tooth. Of course it does, Heather, but the police ruled that it wasn't, and that's what makes it weird as well. Is this just another case of the police not investigating it thoroughly? You get what I'm saying? It's like, is this another case of them not investigating it thoroughly? Right here, the extremities. Examination of the extremities revealed abrasion of linear to irregular shapes on the anterior right arm and forearm. The left elbow, posterior thighs, which would be on front, anterior and posterior right knee, which would be the front and the back. So he had a lot of abrasions all over his body. So dorsum of the right foot, right ankle, right hip area. There was a contusion on the posterior right heel. A contusion would be something where you land wrong and it starts to swell. That basically what that means. There was no evidence of fractures on examination in postmortem radiology. Were they playing a game and it went too far and he died? Yeah, he was in a ATV accident also before any of this. So it also says the internal examination, the organs, and then they give you how much it weighs. An autopsy was performed utilizing the normal thoracico-abdominal and posterior coronal scalp incisions, meaning that they cut your scalp back and peel your skin and your everything back. Um, See, the brain didn't have any lesions. The neck, so here's the toxicology report. Alcohol. So there was none detected. There was no alcohol in the blood, and there was no drugs in his system. That's interesting to me. So he must have not been drinking at that party. He must not have been. Um, could he have been dragged by a car? Yeah. A rock kicked. Frying pan. I mean, it could have been a lot of different things that give you blunt force trauma. I mean, You could fall out of bed and get blunt force trauma, you know? So but obviously he didn't fall out of bed, you know? We don't know if he was murdered. The police said that he wasn't. But just like that other case, who do you believe? How do you believe it? You know? You always hear different variations of information being leaked out, you know? Or not leaked out, but um being talked about. At least in this case, you got the autopsy report. You know, like there's a lot of crimes that you can't even find the autopsy report, and those autopsy reports will tell you a whole hell of a lot about the crime. So, the police wrote on there that it was undetermined. Okay, the police stated it was undetermined, so they really don't have a cause of death. Like, you know, but to be logical, I mean, he's naked except for a pair of shorts and mismatched shoes, which doesn't sound weird to this generation because they like to be with the least amount of clothes on. Where, other generations, they didn't go off half naked everywhere. This generation, for some reason, likes to be with the least amount of clothes on, you know? So I don't really understand. Hi, Victorine. I don't understand the whole, all these injuries. So if the shorts were found a ways from his body and he had all those injuries to his buttock and his back and to the left side, that would mean that those shorts, unless they had cuts in them in the same areas of where the contusions or the abrasions are on his body, that would mean that he didn't have those on after whatever happened to him. Does that make sense? Because if he had those on, then there would be those shorts would be all tore up. Let me play the long. I mean, everybody's talking about the autopsy reports, and that's what I'm talking about today. So I want to play this long crime.
For a teenager in Oklahoma, but still there are so many questions about the death of Noah Presgrove. We dig into the autopsy report with a crime scene investigator. Thanks for joining me for Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Noah Presgrove was 19 when a truck driver found him on a highway in Terrell, Oklahoma, just before 6 a.m. on September 4th of last year. Noah was naked and only wearing unmatching shoes. A pair of shorts believed to be Noah's were found nearby but undamaged. Also found nearby, a metal white chain and part of a molar tooth. What wasn't found? There were no vehicle parts or debris at the scene. The autopsy report says that further investigation revealed that the decedent was at a house party and drinking on September 3rd of 2023. Then he rode an ATV Ranger vehicle with several men that had a rollover accident. The decedent.
Okay, right there it says he was at a party where they were drinking. Or it says revealed that the decedent was at a house party and drinking. Well, the toxicology was done 24 hours later, so that would make sense. But still, if you're dead, it's not going to leave your body. So I don't understand why there was no alcohol in his body.
Was alive following the incident and returned to the party where he got into an argument with his girlfriend. What happened after that remains a mystery. The autopsy found that Noah had several blunt force injuries to his head and his neck. There were fractures to the skull and swelling to the brain. He had abrasions, which are big scrapes on the left side of his face, including his neck, cheek, and ears, and broken lower and upper teeth. The pathologist wrote, there were abrasions on the right back of the head, behind the right ear, and subadjacent posterior right neck. There was bleeding coming out from the right and left ears. The upper and lower teeth were broken with few fragments found inside the mouth. There were white abrasions on the midline mucosa of the upper lip. Noah also had wide scrapes on his back containing black material and abrasions on his arms and his backside. There were lacerations on his lungs and fractures to his ribs. The pathologist ultimately found, in consideration of the circumstances surrounding the death, autopsy examination, and toxicology result, the death of Noah Alexander Nichols is due to multiple blunt force injuries. The decedent was found naked, wearing only a pair of shoes on the side of a highway on the morning of September 4th, 2023. There were no vehicle parts or debris observed on the scene. At this time, what transpired on the body was found on the road having multiple blunt force injuries is unknown. Therefore, the manner of death is deemed undetermined. We now know what caused Noah's death, but we don't know how he died. This is a law and crime legal alert. Google Incognito tracked users' browsing data without their knowledge. Mass Tort Alliance, one of our legal sponsors, is helping users like you file for compensation because Google misled users about the privacy of. Log on to incognitoclaims.com/crimefix. I want to bring in somebody to help me discuss what we know about the autopsy results for Noah Presgrove. She's Alina Burrows. She is the host of Crime Scene Confidential on ID. She's also a forensic consultant, a former crime scene investigator, a CSI, real life CSI. So Alina, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on. This is somebody, a young guy, 19 years old, a healthy guy who suffered a lot of significant trauma to his head and his neck.
Could that chain that they found could have been his chain? Like, if there was a lot of injuries on the left side of his body, it could have been his chain that they found. So this part of his body was damaged more than the other side. Doesn't really make sense to me, but
and his upper body. So there's a lot going on with this autopsy and the results.
A lot. Yeah. This is definitely one of those puzzles that you have to kind of follow down one path until it doesn't make any sense and then pivot and go down a different path. Certainly a lot of trauma.
One thing that I found interesting, and we need to couch everything we say with the fact that we are looking at the autopsy report. We're looking at what the pathologist found. We have not seen photographs of the scene. We have not been to the scene and visited it, so we haven't seen what they are seeing. But one thing that I found interesting was the fact that, very sad, Noah is found on the highway. He has abrasions on his back, wide scrapes is what they basically call it, with black material in there. He's naked. He has two different shoes on. He had some writing on his body, probably from the party. Mm-hmm. Broken teeth. I mean, there's a lot of damage here. But there's no car debris. So does that rule out the possibility that this could have been an accident where he was hit and a vehicle took off, a hit and run, something like that?
Yeah, the injuries that we're looking at really, to me, rule out hit and run for a couple of reasons. One, when we look at the evidence, we're looking at the fact that he is wearing the two mismatched shoes, which the first thing everybody's going to be questioning is, why is he wearing two mismatched shoes? It looks like he had exchanged shoes with a friend at the party. As an investigator, the first thing that piques my interest, why the mismatched shoes? And if he's wearing mismatched shoes, there's another set of mismatched shoes somewhere. But through a little bit of research, it looked like this was a kind of a fun act with a friend. But one of those shoes is a slip-on style speed-laced shoe called a Hey Dude shoe, right? That would come off very easily. So that's our first clue. The second thing is that those shoes don't appear, according to the autopsy report, to have any damage on them. So that rules out dragging, right? We would expect to see some abrasions or some wear and tear on the shoe if that had occurred. So we would expect that he would have lost the shoe, or we would see some damage on the shoe. Then when we look at the injuries that he'd incurred, if we see a hit and run, if he'd been walking on the side of the road and he would have been struck by a vehicle.
Y'all think maybe he could have been in the back of a pickup and got bounced out? I know that that's not so much a thing anymore, but it used to be a thing where you'd ride in the back of the pickup, maybe even do some hood surfing or something like that. There's a lot of things that people do out in the country that they don't do in the cities. You know what I mean? Like being in the back of a pickup, the pickup swerves or hits a bump or something, or swerves to miss something, or just driving crazy and he gets thrown out. Because I mean, if he's you know, country living is different from city living. You do a lot of crazy stuff. Um, we used to go in the cotton fields and, drive our trucks through the cotton field and jump the cotton fields, go mudding through the cotton fields, all kinds of stuff. Go down the back roads as fast as you can. We've hit a mailbox, sent everybody flying to one side of the car. I mean, you do a lot of crazy things out in the country, and I don't know where this area is, Terrell, Oklahoma. Let me see if I can pull it up on a map. It sounds familiar, but I was just thinking about that because okay, it says the population in Terrell was 382 and 386. So there was only less than 400 people in that town. So that's what I'm saying, Texas. I'm saying that they possibly could have been doing something else other than that. Let me show the map right quick, and then I'll get back to the video. Let me show you how small this area is. As you can see the map there, it's not very big. I grew up in a small town like this. They had 900 people. So the small town that I grew up in was actually bigger than this. But look all around there. There's all those back roads. All those back roads you drive around on. I don't even know the road he was found on. My mind's not working all that great, but I decided to get on here and talk about this case because I was doing some research on it earlier. So let's see what this road looks like. See what I mean? There's like the road they talked about was a 2-lane road, and they had like a median on both sides, so it must not have been this road. But look at this back road right here. You've been drinking, you're at a house party, you say, hey, let's go. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff people do in small town. Have y'all ever heard of cow tipping? Yeah, that could have happened. That could have happened. He could have got beaten up for maybe talking to the girl a certain way and somebody didn't like it. But he was 19, so he was already out of school. He graduated in 2023. But look at this town. Kind of resembles the one I grew up in. at these old cotton silos, they used to have the cotton seeds. We used to go and get into cotton seeds and sit there and do all kinds of crazy stuff. These are back roads. This is actually a street, 7th Street. So look at this town. I mean, it looks like a very small town. Look at the roads. See, there's 6th Street. Nothing much to it. As you can tell, you know, there's not a lot to it. There's probably a post office. There's probably a city hall. That was probably a church at one point. Very, very small area. This looks like the school. Yeah, Terrell Indians. So that's probably the elementary or something like that. So everybody knows everybody. So I'm pretty certain somebody knows what happened to this guy. I don't think it's as big of a mystery as people are making it, because I believe somebody knows something. They're just not coming out and saying it. So this could be the elementary or the preschool or something like that. And there's always a water tower. Always. Many times people climb up these things and they graffiti them and everything else. Could have been driving golf carts, could have been doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, when you're out at a party and you were driving an ATV and you get into an accident, they said some of the abrasions were healing, so I mean they could have been hours old. They really don't give you the specific time. See, there's the city hall, the volunteer fire department. So everything's pretty much condensed. Everything is all together. The fact that he was found by a trucker, and they all have a little cafe like this where you walk in, you get you something to eat, and that's usually where you can find the best hamburgers or the best chicken fried steaks or whatever. They probably don't even make chicken fried steaks where you are from. I heard that that's a Texas thing. There's always a gas station, little bit of gas station, and then you're at the edge of town. And there goes road one way, road another, and then there's more country road. So I'm telling you that, yeah, sometimes you can overthink things, like just basically what we're talking about, there's so much that might have not happened. Maybe it wasn't a conspiracy. Maybe it was just something that the autopsy specified exactly what it was, and that's what it is. But I don't believe that. There's too many blunt force traumas, and how can you say it's undisclosed or undetermined?
We would expect to see some fractured femurs, right? Legs, pelvis that were fractured. And what we lack here with his injuries, although they're extensive, is we don't have leg fractures. We don't have broken ankles. We don't have fractured pelvis. All of his injuries really appear to be torso, head, neck. They're all pretty much waist up. Now, we do see some abrasions. We see some minor injuries waist down, but really everything is concentrated from the waist up. And when we lack those, injuries or those, damages on the shoes, that takes this in a very interesting direction.
I think it's interesting too. And the fact that it's so confusing to me that he has all this injury to his body. He's naked. He's wearing 2 different shoes, yet there's a pair of shorts undamaged nearby. So I'm left to wonder, did somebody dump him there? Was he placed there somehow? But then we have the black material in the scrapes on his back, which makes it sound like to me, well, he had to have been scraped somehow. We know that he was in the ATV accident, but was still able to return to the party, according to what's written in the autopsy report. So we have undamaged shorts. He's naked except for shoes, but he had been in this ATV incident, but was still able to go back to the party. So it's very confounding to me. Does it seem like somebody dumped him there?
That's the shorts would look like those shorts are undamaged, and we see that he does have abrasions on his buttocks. So the shorts being undamaged, right? Meaning they don't really appear to have, from the autopsy report, blood on them. They don't appear to be scuffed up or scraped in some way. So then we know he's not wearing them at the time of the incident. So is he walking and holding them, and then something happens to cause him to drop those shorts? Or is he dumped and then somebody throws those out along with him? Those are our two options that we're looking at. With these injuries, we would expect to see a significant amount of blood with the skull fractures that we're dealing with. So if this scene lacks blood, that is something that would lead law enforcement to consider whether or not this was what we call a dump site. But also we have to take into consideration the substrate and if that's something that the ground would saturate, if they were able to find an area, where that blood could potentially be. Now, the autopsy report does say that there's black material embedded in some of the injuries. That to me sounds more like he has been pressed or had some type of crushing injury that has embedded substrate asphalt type material. I'm sure they're going to collect that and want to test that. The other thing that's interesting to me is there is a piece of the autopsy report that seems to indicate some type of pattern injury at the rear shoulder, linear and circular pinpoint types of injuries. I don't know, I haven't seen photographs, but when we're talking about a pattern injury on a roadway, the first thing that comes to my mind is, are we talking about a tire? We seem to have a majority of injuries that are on the left-hand side of his body. We have a left lung that's collapsed.
Well, listen to her. I'm not even an expert or CSI person, and I was stating all this stuff right here in the video. And if you weren't listening to the autopsy side of the video, then you'll go back and listen to it. I was saying it before she was even saying any of that. So it's common sense. If you're looking at a crime scene, you look at the situation surrounding it, and then you kind of make your mind up on what makes sense to the next piece. So I'm stumped though right now. Like, I'm thinking, did somebody jump him, take his clothes off, and dump him? I mean, you could, but there's too much. There's too much. There's too much abrasion. There's too much contusion. There's all kinds of stuff. There's contusion to his right heel. That's underneath the shoe, in the shoe. So were the shoes put on him after he was placed where he was? Because she just said that there was no drag marks, there was no injury to the shoes, there was no blood. Where did this happen at? Where did all this happen? Exactly, Texas. See, those are the questions that you ask. Who, what, when, where. You don't ever ask why, because you will never get the answer to that why. The only people that know the answer to that why is whoever committed the crime and the deceased. So I love the fact that you asked that question with how. How many people were at that party do they know of? And how many people saw him alive for what substantial hours was he alive that they saw him alive? Great question.
We also have rib fractures. when we're looking at beating type of trauma, which has to be a concern or consideration in this case, most ribs that are fractured from beating are lower rib cages, right? That's people that are punching in like gut type shots. His ribs that are fractured are very high. We're talking ribs that are normally protected by your shoulder blades, your clavicles. Those aren't shots that people take when they're punching or beating somebody. Those are corresponding ribs that are fractured on the right and the left, and they're about the width of a tire. Are we looking at somebody who is passed out on the roadway and a car rolls over the body, crushing those ribs, leaving that pattern type injury, embedding asphalt into the back as it rolls his body over?
That was going to be my next question to you. My thinking was, is he in the road and he's run over by a vehicle? The vehicle maybe doesn't see him. It mentions how it was not a well-lit road. And somehow he's in the road and he gets run over by a vehicle or hit by a vehicle that isn't aware that they're hitting somebody or something like that. I don't know that. That's speculation on my part. And again, we haven't seen these pictures. They say that his manner of death, and there are, 5 manners of death, just so the listeners and the viewers understand. We have natural, accidental, homicide, suicide, and undetermined. This is undetermined because they don't have enough information. They know what caused his death, all of this blunt force trauma to the head and the neck, but they don't know basically the how. Like, did somebody do this intentionally? Was it caused by another person? We don't have that information.
So let me ask you this question, chat. If he was ran over by somebody, wouldn't there have been tire mark residue on his chest? I don't know. I'm just thinking here. What do y'all think about that? That's an interesting theory right there. Possibly he was ran over by somebody that didn't see him in the road. He was passed out in the road, which is possible. You know what? I've been so intoxicated, I passed out for an instant in the middle of a railroad track. And had it not been my friend that was not far behind me, I could have gotten hit by a train later on that night. You know what I mean? So, but the autopsy said he didn't have any alcohol in his toxicology. That don't make sense to me somehow. That's why it's so weird. That's why it's so weird, because the pieces don't add up.
So where does the investigation go from here? Because I can't imagine that it's over. There has to be something else. There has to be more going on.
Well, keep in mind that when a body is found nude, they are automatically going to look towards, is sexual assault a possibility? I don't think that that's the case here, but the fact that he is found naked is going to be cause for concern. They're going to take penile swabs, anal swabs. They're automatically going to do fingernail scrapings and clippings just to see if there are any signs of struggle.
Hey, Texas, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that he could have got mauled by hogs? Like they said that other boy could have possibly got mauled by a pack of hogs? I mean, I don't see that, but anything's possible. You just don't ever know. I mean, could there have been an animal that attacked him, drug him? No. I wasn't thinking that, but you remember the other case down College Station where the kid was heading home for Christmas and they found, his clothes and they never found him, but they found a backpack, they found weed, they found all kinds of stuff. They found his car in the ditch. Okay. Yeah, that's what I mean, I'm just throwing everything out there because I'm trying to figure it out. What could have caused these abrasions, and mostly on the left side, that just
struggle.
weird.
So I'm sure that those are being sent to a lab just to see if there are any type of foreign DNA profiles they're going to wait for those to come back. So no, an investigation is not over because it's undetermined. They're going to be conducting interviews. I would be hard pressed to think that there is somebody out there that does not have some information. You do not hit something of that size, if that were the case, not seeing the scene or any photographs, but if there is a pattern injury on this child, somebody out there.
Could it have been the trucker that called it in? Probably not, because he probably had to stay to have his truck identified and everything. But doesn't mean it couldn't have been another trucker that went down that road.
There knows they hit something.
Yeah, it's confounding. And I think we need more information too about how did he leave the party? Was it after the argument with the girlfriend, or was it sometime after that? Like, was he walking away from the party? How far away was the party? There's still a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to, but we'll look into it further. And we appreciate your time, Alina. It's a really sad case. Just poor kid.
It's
passing
very
away like
sad.
this. It's awful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know the family just wants answers.
Yeah, most definitely. And they deserve them. Thank you so much, Alina Burrows, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next.
You know, that is a sad case. This is a sad case because it seems like nobody's really certain, but people are kind of saying, well, these are kind of the injuries that are seen mostly in this, mostly in that. I mean, I think it would have been a road like this because they said it was 2 lanes. So it was one going this way, one going this way. It could have very well been this road. Who knows? I didn't get the road information, but there's small town America. There's a railroad track. There's always a railroad track next to a small town. There's the Welcome to Terrell sign. Looks like a ranching kind of community. How much is gas when this was taken? $3.29 on January 2023. Good Lord. And there's that good old Hunt Brothers pizza. Have y'all ever had that pizza? You haven't lived until you've had Hunt Brothers. Maybe they'll hear me advertising their stuff and give me an advertising deal. But honestly, you haven't lived until you've had Hunt Brothers. I mean, in this case, it just brings so much to the surface regarding what happened to him that night. Like I said, it looks like an old farming town. Maybe cotton. Looks like one of those towns that you definitely raise hell in. You know, have a lot of partying in the country. See, we used to go party by the oil derricks, by the pump jacks, by the tanks, way out there where it's nice and dark and you can't be seen. See, this is Main Street, Terrell. It doesn't look like there's not a lot of money here. It doesn't look like. There's some pretty horses. But I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know anything about this town, so if anybody's near there or from there, I'm not judging your town. It just doesn't look very well kept up. It looks like the old town I grew up in. Honestly, like I said, there's always old buildings where people abandon them because the occupants pass away. There's always like an old pickup truck, in the yard, stuff like that. And there's some newer houses that are revamped, stuff like that. So I'm not judging. I'm just saying there's a nice little house right there. That's a little cabin looking area. But see, you get to the outskirts and there's the dirt roads, and these dirt roads go for miles and miles and miles. You hit these dirt roads, you're basically all alone back there. I'd like to know where that party was, whether it was in town or whether it was out of town. See, most of them have gravel roads. I'm shocked we haven't seen a lot of dogs walking around here. I mean, maybe there were, but just the day Google was there, they weren't walking around because usually in small towns you see a lot of dogs. See, this was February 2013, so Google confuses me sometimes with all the stuff they do. There's some basketball courts. So what do y'all think? Do I see a fence? Where at? I saw many fences. Yeah, just an old small town. I mean, yeah, there's a fence right there. I mean, to me, see this pickup right here, and I'm just using this as an example. Not trying to say anything about this occupant, but usually whenever I was younger, we'd ride in the back of the pickup, usually with the tailgate down, either standing up or we'd be on the side right here. And, the music be blaring. We could be going 80, 90 miles an hour down the back road. And then the person driving would start acting crazy. And I don't know if they'd try to intentionally knock you out of the truck. See, or they wouldn't have a tailgate like this, and you'd be hanging on for dear life. And they'd be intentionally trying to knock you out. Or we'd tie something to the back, a rope, a chain, an old hood or something, and we'd call that surfing. You'd get on there and there'd be a rope coming out of here. You'd be hanging on. There'd be a chain or an old hood right here. You'd be driving down one of those back roads trying to hang on for dear life. I mean, because there's not a lot to do in these little towns. You gotta make up your own fun. See, there's another red pickup. There's an old pickup right there in the yard. Like I said, there's always one. Either an old pickup or, an old car. Sometimes you use, an old swimming pool or something as a water, bird bath or something. You build up a brick type thing. This looks like my grandma's yard. My grandma had all kinds of stuff in her yard, man. See, there's an old pickup right there. It's a pretty nice one. So you can tell that there's pickups in this truck, and I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened. Hell, it could have been a vehicle, a car, It could have been an ATV that was dragging something, Yeah, I mean, see, this was an old church, it looks like. I think we passed this on the main road. See, there's always a nursing home. And how can you tell a nursing home? This is either a nursing home or a school. They have the flag there. Oh, okay, this is a school. But the nursing home always has an awning like this and the handrails. So it got me confused there for a minute, but this is the school that we passed earlier. And then we jump ahead to June 2023. They've installed some speed bumps, obviously because people have been going too fast down Apache Street. And there's another type of truck that's really kind of famous here in Texas or Oklahoma because of the oil fields and stuff like that. There's a flatbed. It could have been a truck like this. Usually welders drive that kind of truck. People there in the oil fields or, work out in the cattle and stuff like that. This looks like the post office. Pretty nice one. Pretty nice post office. Like I said, this is small town America. So there's not a lot, obviously, that catches your eye right off the bat. Just like you blink too fast, you're going to go right through this. This is probably where the lawyers, says funeral home. That's a funeral home. Wow. Right next to the fire department, City Hall. And I'm sure there used to be a building there and probably a building there. But yeah, small town America, you do what you can to get by. This is the telephone company. So I guess this is where you go get your internet, you go get your telephone turned on. This was probably somebody's house turned into a business. Might be a snow cone stand looking thing. Like I said, small town America, you can make anything work. Don't need a lot of permits and stuff like that. So this is where Noah was from. And this is where he passed away. See, there's a lot of pickups in this town. There's an old car right there. They all have, stuff in the yard. I mistook that for being a nursing home. It was a school. I thought it was a nursing home, but it was a school. But they all have that awning, like I said. They have that awning and they have that, the handrails. There's an old camper. And that, it's always funny to me where that looks like an old car right there. I was going to say, if that was the riding lawnmower, usually the riding lawnmower stays where it dies. Like, you can always tell where the riding lawnmower died on them. Usually stays right there. See, these yards are decorated nice, You've got these old wheels going on. This is a business, it looks like. I don't know what kind of business. And there's an old truck right there. Like I said, there's always an old truck somewhere. If Google was up to date, you could probably drive or go down. It'd be nice if Google was live, like it went all through town. You could literally probably go down these streets and check out any of these vehicles to see if they have any front end damage. You get what I'm saying? If they have any front end damage, you could always ask, okay, what happened right here? Or what happened back here? I wonder if they went and did that. They looked at some of these vehicles just riding around town. See if they could tell if any of these vehicles or any kind of equipment had any kind of damage on them, because you could definitely tell. Um, exactly, exactly. Buddy of mine fell through the awning at my school. What was he doing up there? My tomatoes are going crazy. Anyone want some? Couple tumbleweeds. Kimbleweeds, you mean? Everyone knows everyone talks a lot. Someone has to know something. You're right. A small town near me, they used to do a lawnmower camp or a combine derby. They can get wild. You're right on that. You're very right on that. You never been to Ohio, not Cleveland. No, I can't say I have. I think I've been through there, but I don't think I've actually stayed long enough to really, see anything. And there's that grocery, or there's that store again. You can get you some propane. There's another old pickup over here. There's a car. Like I said, if I were the police investigating this case, I would drive around these areas and be looking at people's vehicles. See if I could catch one that had damage on it, and maybe ask, hey, what went on right there? What went on right here? If there was any damage on the door compartment or anything like that. But if he fell out the back of the truck, you're not going to find any of that. And this is an auto shop. There's another one of those trucks. There's a manhole. So that lady said possibly he got run over. That makes some sense. But I would have thought that during the autopsy they would have seen the ability for that. There was some tire marks or whatever, burn marks on them. See, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be cruising all through town, stalking vehicles, just looking at them, looking and see if I notice any kind of damage that would be conducive to hitting somebody. See, this cafe has business now. Earlier when I rode by here, it didn't have no business. See, there's a lot of trucks. And usually when you have trucks like this or this, then there's some kind of ranch or some kind of business where these back roads need these bigger type of trucks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah, there was a tooth on the ground. No, he didn't. That's what I was wondering too. I was wondering if it was in town or was in an old country house or, out in the pasture somewhere. I wonder if they had that party like in the middle of a pasture or something, you know? See, because you look at this business this way, there's no vehicles. You look at it the other way, there's vehicles. See, I'm all curious now. Like, am I going to catch something when these vehicles all beat up? See if there's any kind of front end damage. Because it was to the left side, so it would have been the right side of the vehicle if he was on the right side of the road. If he was on the left side of the road, it would have been a car coming this way, not this way. I mean, but there's no cameras on those kind of roads. See, that's what I'd be doing. And there's always a pile of asphalt. Just random places, or just a big old pile. We used to run and grab some and take it in our yard, patch up potholes. I hope there's I hope there's statute of limitations on that one. Dang. Yeah, they said the top and lower parts of his mouth had some abrasions. No, they said the clothes. Well, the CSI investigator said the shorts weren't torn. Yeah, the shorts were folded. I hate when Google does this. They like take multiple different cameras, knock you back in time, so you can't really tell what's current and what's not. Well, you guys, this is all I have for tonight. If you guys stumble upon anything you think I should look at, leave it in the comments or leave me a comment with your email address and I'll email you and we can correspond back and forth. Yeah, you can't really tell much on those. I'd be looking at the schools. Are these kids still in school that were with him out there partying? You know, questions. You just gotta ask questions. Ask the questions. Dang, Google can get right up on your truck. See, was he standing up? They braked too fast and he went, and then they ran over him, trying to stop. I thought they had taken the phones from the people at the party. They found some leads in the convos. I haven't dug that deep. Yeah, that's what the News Nation report started saying, but I'm gonna have to dig a little deeper than this. Just at the current pace, I'm gonna work backwards, I guess, just like the police did in the Idaho 4 case. No, you didn't hear that from me. God, there's some weird shit going on with that case right now. You know what cracks me up is everybody thinks they know what's going on. They're like, "Did you see this? Did you see that?" Okay, so you see this, just like what we're talking about right now. If we were to see a truck with a dented right hand side, okay, would you automatically think that that was the truck that hit this guy or ran over him? Would you? Or would you say possibly that might not be involved at all? Yeah, Rondi, if you find anything that we talked about tonight, just email me. You have my email. So just let me know if you find anything and I'll be doing some stuff on this case for sure. Look at this old truck. This thing's on jack, so there's no way that this was involved. Did that boat? But what I'm saying is, like, as we're going through this, people are very like, if you saw some blood on this, it could be deer blood, and you could have seen this, and you'd be like, no, no, the blood from that night, even though this is July 20 or June 2023 when this was taken. So he hadn't washed his truck since the crime, right? Here's that truck again that I saw down that road. I recognized it by the stickers. See how I don't know if you're like that, but I'm like that. I'm that type of person. I remember small things about vehicles, small things about people's faces, um, things like that. You know, that's fine, Rondi. That's fine. We got plenty of time. I don't have very much scheduled. But yeah, I remember a lot of things. I remember houses, I remember, descriptive things that normal people just they act like they don't see or that there's no way that could have been. You know what I mean? But this truck was down on another road, and I think it was on um, 4th Street. I'm all stuck in that red truck. Stop at 12 gauge. Move on. This must be the projects over here. Government housing, HUD homes. I would say apartment buildings. I don't want to be calling these people ghetto. I don't even know this town. I've probably been through this town. It sounds familiar. Let me X out of here and see where it's at. How close it is to Oklahoma City. Okay. I probably have because I've been to. This is where the casinos are at, Thackerville. This is 35, and yeah, I've been through Ardmore, all the way up here to Turner Falls, right up here. So that town is where'd it go? Right here. So the town is right there. So where's 35 at? Right here. So yeah, I may have been through this town because I was just up in that area this past couple months ago, like in May. You go all the way up here and you go into Turner Falls. They have all the waterfalls and stuff over here. But Thackerville, that's where they have the casinos. The state line is right here. So it's not far from the state line. There was another murder in this area. The the Kansas moms and all that. That's where that area is right there. So that's interesting. Hey Glitter, how you doing? Like stampeded? Yeah, I like her too. She's fair. You're from Tulsa? Okay, that makes sense. How'd you end up where you're at? Good grief. That's quite a distance. Anyways, I'm glad you guys are here, that you spent your evening with me. I hope this case um, finds some more information so we can actually discuss it a little more. Um, I'm not going to get fanatical on these cases like the other people do on the other cases because I know that you want to know and I know that you want to understand certain things. But it's always best to investigate on your own. Like do your own investigation and see what you find out with your own investigative mind, your analytical mind. I will be updating because I am curious about this case. Um, I just don't want to become fanatical on these cases because or start because there's so little evidence, you start letting your mind run. You start letting your mind wander, and before long, you're stuck in that water tower, swearing up and down somebody had something to do with it in the water tower. You know what I mean? But I'm not feeling all too great. I don't know if it's a sinus infection coming on or something. But I'm gonna call it a night, guys. I hope y'all have a wonderful night and that you enjoyed the live stream. If you watch it on replay, leave me a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed, what part you already know about, and if you know any extra information that I didn't discuss or we didn't discuss in the chat. Um, like I said, I will be doing some more research on this case, just not right now, you know. Um, and today I feel that Brian Koberger is guilty. There, I said it. For today, he is guilty. How's that for controversy? Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful night and continue to come back and listen to my live streams. Y'all have a wonderful night. I'll see y'all later. Maestro, cue that music. And that Brian Koberger is guilty was for Heather Fitzgerald, if y'all didn't know.